What's going on? Welcome back to Talking About Baseball. Today, I will have for you my trade deadline grades. It's a couple days after the MLB trade deadline. All the trades have been finalized and finished, and we will be ranking them, we will be grading them, and I will be showing them to you in order of rank. We will have one A plus on the board today. You'll see who that is at the end, which I usually do not give out A pluses, but I really like what that team did at the deadline, and you'll have to stay and watch till the end of the video to see what that is. But anyway, let's get started with the lowest ranked team, and that is the Minnesota Twins. Like I said, our number 30 team is going to be the Minnesota Twins. They did acquire a reliever, Trevor Richards, pretty late on deadline day, and this is just not what you want to see from a team that's competing for a playoff spot. Currently the 6 seed, or maybe 5 seed, I don't know what it's like between them and the Royals, but it's a very close race, and with the playoffs and the AL teams fighting for a playoff spot based on their buying status at the deadline, this is definitely not what Twins fans wanted to see. They come in last here with a D-. Now we've got the Giants starting off our D group. This team was different from most teams that I graded bad in the fact that I honestly had no clue what they were doing at the deadline. So all day it looked like they were selling. They sold on Jorge Soler on the 29th. Alex Cobb was gone on the 30th. Mike Baumann, a reliever who they acquired a few days earlier, went to the Angels, which interesting move by them. And then randomly, right before the deadline was up, they just decided to trade for Mark Canha. They didn't get any prospects from the Jorge Soler trade except for Sabin Ceballos, who's unranked on their top 30. They got Jacob Breshnan in the Alex Cobb deal, unranked on their top 30. And overall, I just feel like they could have done more this deadline. It did not impress me at all, and that's why they got a D. Moving on to the D pluses now, we have 2 of them. Starting off with the Colorado Rockies. They only traded away 2 pitchers. I just feel like they could have gotten rid of more. They had 2 catchers in Elias Diaz and Jacob Stallings that were looking to be hot commodities at the deadline, and neither of them got dealt. Both pending free agents, so it doesn't really make too much sense to not trade them. But from the 2 deals they made, they did get some decent prospects. All 3 of them in their top 30, getting number 20, Bradley Blaylock, who's pictured on the right, Eugenier Herrera at number 29, and Luis Peralta at number 30. The other D-plus team is going to be the Oakland Athletics. They did end up trading away Lucas Erceg after waiting a pretty long time, and surprisingly, finally traded away Paul Blackburn. The return for Paul Blackburn was their number 20 prospect, Cade Morris. And for Lucas Erceg, they got 3 guys who are new to their top 30, including the number 1 guy, Mason Barnett, who is now at number 6 for them. He is pictured on the right, along with number 15, right-handed pitcher Will Klein, and number 28, outfielder Jared Dickey. Now we've got the C minuses, starting it off with the Reds. The Reds, kind of similar deadline to last year. They didn't really do much, but they acquired some veterans that could help them down the stretch and did not give up too many prospects to acquire some decent players. And most of the players they got in return were Major League ready. They traded away guys like Frankie Montas, Lucas Sims, and Austin Slater that were not going to help them the rest of the year, and guys that were pending free agents. In return, they got Jacob Junis, who I'm pretty sure has 2 years of team control, Joey Wiemer, who could be a really good guy to add to that outfield core, Ty France, who hopefully they can rejuvenate after he was DFA'd by the Mariners and has just been horrible. Reliever Alex Young they lost as well, who I did not mention earlier, and they also acquired right-handed pitcher Ovis Porter and Lucas Sims deal, who is unranked on their top 30, and Davis Wenzel, who has had a really rough start to his major league career with Texas. Moving on to another C- team, we've got the Braves with Jorge Soler and reacquiring Luke Jackson. Jackson was a great guy for them in the playoffs in that 2021 run. Of course, Jorge Soler was a World Series MVP, but only getting these 2 players did not surprise me that much. After they got them on the 29th, Alex Anthopoulos did absolutely nothing on deadline day, which did surprise me. Their prospects are not as rich as they used to be. They don't really have all that much at the moment, but it is surprising to me they traded away almost nothing to get not all that much. Yet another C- team. This one's similar to the Giants, but in a different way, is the Rangers at a C-. Another team that kind of bought and also sold at the same time. They traded away Michael Lorenzen to get left-handed pitcher Walter Pennington, but other than that, they did buy at the deadline, getting two Tigers in different trades, and catcher Carson Kelly and left-handed reliever Andrew Chafin. I didn't love the fact that they gave up Liam Hicks, despite the fact that he is unranked on the Tigers system. I think that he could have been a nice piece for them to keep as catcher depth for the future, but the Rangers still had an alright deadline, in my opinion. Moving on to another C- team in the Diamondbacks, and I just don't feel like they they did enough. They gave up a prospect in Davison De Los Santos, who I really liked, for AJ Puck, who I don't really like. They did get Dylan Floro, which was a good add in my opinion, but still nothing great from them, and then also ended up taking a flyer on the huge contract of Josh Bell. Moving on to our C teams, we've got the Angels. The only trade that didn't really make too much sense for me was acquiring Mike Baumann, but that's probably just reliever depth. They didn't give up anything for him. They did trade away two of their best relievers, if not their two best, in Carlos Estevez and Luis Garcia. But the prospect return for those two players was really high. Although the Angels farm system is not very good, they did get their new number 3 in George Klassen, who's pictured on the right, their new number 8 in left-handed pitcher Samuel Algieri, and then also from the Red Sox getting first baseman Nico Cavadas and outfielder Matthew Lugo. I think they could have traded away more. I'm making a video of 20 players that surprised me that were not traded on deadline day. That will be coming out most likely tomorrow, potentially the day after. So look for that. There's a lot of Angels on that list. Now we've got our C pluses, starting off with the White Sox. They did add Miguel Vargas, which I did like, and a couple of top 15 prospects in their system. Infielders Joral Perez and Alexander Albertus from the Dodgers. In the trade where they dealt away Eric Fetty, Tommy Pham, and Michael Kopech. Eloy Jimenez surprised me as they didn't get a very good prospect in return for him, which did not surprise me. Tanner Banks, I did like acquiring infielder William Bergolla for him, and Paul DeJong finally made his way out of Chicago to the Royals, and they got right-handed pitcher Gerald Rosario for him. Moving on to our next C-plus team. This is the first team that's going to be like this. As you can see at the top, it says Pirates Additions. So I had to split it up between two for the Pirates and a lot of other teams as we get closer to some of these teams that made a lot of trades. Because they acquired so many guys, I couldn't put all of their additions and losses on one screen, so they have them on two separate ones. So I'll show you the people they lost after the guys that they added. The bigger guys that the Pirates added include Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who they got from the Blue Jays right as the deadline approached. They acquired Brian De La Cruz from the Marlins, who they were rumored to get for a very long time, and ended up getting another middle infield prospect in Nick York, their new number 5 prospect. Now, moving on to the players that the Pirates lost, most of them are prospects. They gave up Charles McAdoo for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who I did like. The two major leaguers they gave up were left-hander Martin Perez, who went to the Padres, and Quinn Priester, who went back to the Red Sox in the Nick York deal. The other guys were prospects who I'm not super impressed by, and guys that I don't really hate them giving up, but also I feel like they maybe could have given up one more high-ranked prospect and maybe try to make a decent playoff run this year, as the NL wildcard is very tight but also kind of wide open at the same time, and the Pirates, with their pretty much ace of the league, Paul Skeens, have already got a decent chance in his rookie year. Yet another C-plus in the NL Central, we've got the Brewers. They acquired 3 right-handed pitchers at the deadline. Aaron Savale, who was a month ago now. He was at the very beginning of July. Nick Mears from the Rockies and Frankie Montas from the Reds in division trade. They did not give any prospects for Montas, just Joey Wiemer and Jacob Junis. And the other 3 prospects they did give up don't really impress me all that much. Bradley Blaylock, I didn't love them giving up, especially for a guy like Nick Mears, who's not very impressive to me with his very high ERA. But I do think the Brewers made a decent effort to get in some good pitching at the deadline, although I would have liked to see them add some more offense. And now the third NL Central team in a row acquiring a C+ will be my Chicago Cubs. They had a very interesting deadline. I really liked their start, getting Nate Pearson from the Blue Jays for 2 prospects that were never going to go anywhere for the Cubs. I like the Isaac Paredes trade, despite the fact that it got rid of fan favorite Christopher Morel, but Isaac Paredes I think could be a really good player for the Cubs in the future. And then they made a really interesting deal for me to trade away Mark Leiter Jr., which I didn't disagree with, but they got 2 prospects that do not look too good to me. Jack Neely, a reliever prospect who I think could be really good in the future, and Ben Cowles, an infielder prospect who can't really hit at all. Now we move on to the B- teams. Pretty solid grades we're getting into now. The Tigers acquired Liam Hicks from the Rangers. I mentioned him earlier and how much I like him. The Tigers, this deadline, clearly very much focused on getting quantity. They got 2 really good prospects from the Dodgers for Jack Flaherty, including their new number 5, who's pictured on the right, Thayron Liranzo, who could be the catcher of the future. He also does play first base because of defensive concerns. They also got pitchers Joseph Montalvo and Eric Silva, who I think could be solid in their organization at some point, and also shortstop Trey Sweeney, who was originally a Yankee, got traded to the Dodgers and is now a Tiger, but is actually a pretty solid prospect in my opinion. Moving on to the B-minus Royals, they acquired Hunter Harvey as one of the early trades at the deadline. I didn't love how much they gave up for them. Caden Wallace, a prospect that I really liked, and the number 39 pick in the MLB draft. But I did really like what they did on deadline day, getting Michael Lorenzen the day before, and then in the span of about 15 minutes acquiring Lucas Urseg and Paul DeYoung. Paul DeYoung will either play second base, third base, or be a depth infielder, as he will obviously not be playing short with Bobby Witt Jr. there. And Lucas Urseg is a really great add to this bullpen along with Hunter Harvey, and Michael Lorenzen gives them even more veteran starting pitching depth. Moving on to the other B-minus team, I really liked what the Padres did, along with actually kind of hating what they did. They really bolstered that bullpen, getting the two best relievers and maybe two of the top 5 best players on the market, and Jason Adam, formerly of the Rays, and Tanner Scott, formerly of the Marlins. In the Tanner Scott deal, they also added starting pitcher and relief pitcher Brian Hoeing, who I really like, but hasn't been great in the majors yet. And they also did trade away a solid reliever in Enil De Los Santos, who you'll about to see when we talk about the guys they got rid of, for 2 prospects to kind of replenish their system after they gave up a lot, and you're going to see why they're only at a B- for all the good players they got. They gave up some of the best prospects in their system. Robbie Snelling, who's pictured on the right, Adam Mazur, and Graham Pauley were all top 10 prospects for them. They are all gone. Dylan Lesko and Homer Bush, also both top 10 prospects, also all gone. And the only major leaguer they gave up was Enil De Los Santos, who's been having a pretty solid year for them. But like I said, I think the players they got are really good. They just had to give up a lot of prospects to get them. Although this is not anything unusual for the Padres and AJ Preller, as this is kind of how he rolls, and it really has not worked out very well in the past. And I think if the Padres were to miss the playoffs or not go anywhere in the playoffs, Preller's job is probably finally gone, and I say finally because he's been close a whole lot of times. Yeah. Moving on to our B teams, we've got the Guardians. Lane Thomas going to the Guardians may be one of my favorite trades of this deadline. They did give up 2 pretty solid prospects for him, but Lane Thomas to the Guardians just seemed like a perfect fit. Their outfield needed an extra bat, and he's already been making an impact in their win over the Orioles today. They also acquired Alex Cobb, who should be coming off the injured list pretty soon. He's been really good in the last few years for the Giants, but due to injuries has yet to pitch this year. Next up, we've got the Phillies, who are also at a B. They had a kind of an interesting deadline strategy in my chance. They traded away major league talent, which was interesting. They made 2 trades with the Orioles to just give them relievers, 4 prospects, which surprised me. Well, I guess the first time they got Austin Hayes, who will be good for their outfield depth, just an improvement over Christian Pache. And then the next time they got Moises Chase, who will not be up in their top 30, and Seth Johnson, who is an improving pitching prospect. I think the Phillies pitching development team could make him into a really good starter alongside all the great guys they already have. They also added to their bullpen, getting major league help in Tanner Banks and Carlos Estevez. Another two really good relievers added to the mix, just like the Padres did. And the Phillies remain the top team in the NL and one of the best teams in the league. And we'll see if these improvements can help them at a World Series run. Yet another B. We've got quite a few Bs in a row here. This one will be the Astros. They got 2 left-handed pitchers at the trade deadline. The first one was Yusei Kikuchi, who they did give up 2 really good prospects for, and a major league talent, Joey Loperfido. But I think this was a really solid trade for the Astros, as they needed some starting pitching help, and Yusei Kikuchi seemed like the very clear answer on who to get. And the Yankees pretty much just gave them Caleb Ferguson for free. He hasn't been having a great season, but I think the Astros could change him into the pitcher that he used to be with the Dodgers. Next up, we've got the Red Sox, also at a B. They added James Paxton back after he was DFA'd by the Dodgers because his walks and hits were too high, and his ERA was at a whopping 3.7, way too high for them. I hate the Dodgers. Anyway, they also acquired Danny Jansen, the aforementioned Quinn Priester, who we talked about with the Padres, and 2 relievers in Lucas Sims and Luis Garcia. This does seem like a pretty good return, but also the prospects they gave up were pretty solid. I didn't love the fact that they gave up Ovis Porter, although he's not ranked on the team that he was given up to. I did like Moises Bolivar. I liked Edinson Polino. They gave up 4 prospects for the 37-year-old Luis Garcia, who is a rental. Nico Cavadas and Matthew Lugo, the top ones who I also really liked. And Nick York, of course, they gave up for Quinn Priester, and I think Quinn Priester does have a lot of hope, and Nick York didn't really have a spot in Boston, but I also feel like Boston could have gotten a little bit more for York. Another AL East team with a B, and there's still more to come after that in the B-plus range. We've got Seranthony Dominguez, Christian Pache, Zach Eflin, Trevor Rogers, Eloy Jimenez, Austin Slater, Livan Soto, and Gregory Soto. The two Sotos, not related in any way, all going to the Orioles. They clearly had a big emphasis on pitching and outfield depth at this deadline. They did trade away Austin Hayes to the Phillies, but Eloy could be a good replacement for him, not defensively. Christian Pache was recently DFA'd after playing, I think, one game for them, and Austin Slater was acquired on deadline day, but I don't think will play much of an impact. Gregory Soto was an interesting acquisition from the Phillies, as the Phillies weren't a selling team, but the Orioles got some bullpen help from them in Seranthony Dominguez and Soto. And Trevor Rogers, although I didn't love how much they gave up for him, I thought was a decent deal. And my favorite deal for them, of course, was Zach Eflin, who's pictured on the right. Moving on to the prospects they gave up, the top guy was definitely Connor Norby. And other than that, they didn't really give up all that much to get some of these good players. Seth Johnson, I didn't love that they gave up on after they acquired him a couple deadlines ago. I really liked him. But the rest of the guys were not really players that I was super excited to see in the Orioles orange, and I think this was a pretty solid deadline for them, although I also feel like they could have acquired a little bit more. Moving on now, we've got the Dodgers. Honestly, I don't think they could have done much more. Tommy Edman was a really solid player. They got Moises Bolivar for a guy that they weren't going to use in James Paxton. They got one of the best pitchers, if not the best pitcher, and maybe player on the whole trade deadline market in Jack Flaherty, and Kevin Kiermaier, who's pretty much just ring chasing at this point. But some of the prospects they gave up I didn't really love. I didn't love the fact that they gave up on Miguel Vargas so early, although with the White Sox development department, I'm sure he won't turn into anything much. Ryan Yarbrough and James Paxton, who are both DFA'd because their ERAs were too close to 4. Not even over 4, they were just too close to it, which is crazy. And also, I was very surprised they traded away Thayron Liranzo. He can play first base along with catcher, as they have kind of a jam at catcher, and so can Dalton Rushing. That's why I thought it was a very clear move to trade away their other catching prospect, Diego Cartaya, as he mainly plays catcher and has been rumored in trade talks for a long time, along with another better prospect than Trey Sweeney. And so I didn't really love that for them, but they did get the job done, and a B might be a little bit harsh. I also feel like they could have added a little bit more, along with I didn't love what they gave up. For our first B+, I've got the Blue Jays. They got some really solid prospects in this long additions list, including their new number 8, Jonathan Clase, their new number 3, Jake Bloss, and number 22, Will Wagner, both coming from the Astros. Joey Luperfido, the only major league talent that they acquired. Charles McAdoo, an outfielder from the Pirates, who I think is really underrated and I think could be really good for the Blue Jays. And also Edinson Polino, who I mentioned earlier that I really liked, who they got from the Red Sox for Danny Jansen. Among the guys they lost, they did trade away a lot, but I think, like I said, they got a really good return for them. Top reliever Yimi Garcia was traded away. Solid position players in Danny Jansen, Justin Turner, and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa were traded away, as well as key pitchers for them, Yusei Kikuchi and Trevor Richards. I also did not love the fact that they gave up on Nate Pearson so early, but I still do like the deadline overall. Yet another B+. I talked about liking their return for Hunter Harvey earlier. That's the Nationals. I really like that they got Caden Wallace and Caleb Lomavita from the Royals. Obviously didn't directly get Caleb Lomavita, but they got the pick to take him. I also really liked the trade they went and got with the Guardians for Lane Thomas, getting Alex Clemmy, Rafael Ramirez Jr., and Jose Tena. I thought that was a really solid trade for them. And Andres Chaparro, although that he's not rated on their top 30, I think he was a solid prospect to get in return for a rental reliever in Dylan Floro. Next up is another B+. They got one of the most exciting players to watch available at this deadline. That was Randy Arozarena, also acquiring reliever Yimi Garcia. I didn't love that they didn't really do much on deadline day other than getting JT Charwa, who is no one to frown upon. They also got some decent prospects as they weren't in full buy mode, which is kind of fine because they got enough players, they got what they needed, and they also got infield depth in Justin Turner. Moving on to what they gave up, it really wasn't all that much. Jonathan Clase went to the Blue Jays for Yimi Garcia, which was the best guy that they gave up. And other than that, they gave up Aiden Smith and Brody Hopkins to the Blue Jays for Arozarena. And other than that, they really did not give up that much at all. I liked the deadline a lot because they didn't give up that much and they got a good amount of major league talent. We have 5 A's, so these are the official top 5 teams trade deadlines for me. And it hurts me to say this, but my division rival Cardinals had a really good deadline. I really like what they did. Eric Fetty, maybe the best trade of the deadline in my opinion. He does exactly what they needed. They needed some starting pitcher depth. I really liked Eric Fetty going on the move. They also traded away a guy in Dylan Carlson who they were not really going to use all that much, and they got a really solid reliever in Sean Armstrong for him, along with bringing back Tommy Pham, who hit a grand slam in his very first game back in St. Louis. I think this was just really solid for them. They couldn't have done much better, and that's why I gave them an A-, although there is 4 teams ahead of them. And now we've got the Rays additions. They got an A because the haul of prospects they got is absolutely crazy. We're going to read off a couple of their top 30. And by the way, they got 9 new top 30 prospects all at the top of the list here. Shortstop Gregory Barrios, outfielder Aiden Smith, right-handed pitcher Brody Hopkins, who's in their top 10 at number 7. Infielder Mac Horvath, right-handed pitcher Jacob Baumeister, outfielder Matt Etzel, right-handed pitcher Dylan Lesko, who I loved out of his draft, but he dropped due to arm concerns after getting Tommy John. I think the Rays could turn him into a great pitcher. And they also got some other prospects you can see at the bottom, along with a major league guy in Dylan Carlson and bringing back Ryan Yarbrough. Dylan Carlson, I'm sure, is about to become a Gold Glove center fielder and hit like 300 with 30 bombs every year just because it's the Rays. Although, if we move on to the guys they gave up basically their whole major league roster. It's kind of crazy all the things that they gave up. But, like I said, the prospects that they got in return are very valuable and they're great. They're great players for their future, and I think the Rays honestly could be World Series bound pretty soon with the guys they have coming up. Next up, we've got the number 3 team, and I've got that as the New York Yankees. They kicked their deadline off with getting Jazz Chisholm Jr., and then on deadline day, they bolstered their bullpen, getting Mark Leiter Jr. and Enyel De Los Santos. My favorite thing about this is that they really did not give up a ton of good prospects to get either players. Jazz Chisholm Jr., obviously, they'd had to give up a little bit, but Serna and Augustin Ramirez being the top 2 guys, I really didn't love. And also, they did end up getting a prospect in return for Caleb Ferguson, who they were not going to end up using. And the other prospects they gave up for the 2 relievers did not impress me very much. And now we've got their New York counterpart in the Mets, who I think just checked off every box you could possibly need. They needed an outfielder or a left-handed bat, Jesse Winker, boom. They needed a starting pitcher, Paul Blackburn, boom. They needed reliever help. They went out and got 4 of them. And Phil Maton, Ryan Stanek, Tyler Zuber, who is marked as a prospect even though he's not, and Huascar Brazoban, all from different teams, all 4 different trades. And this was just a perfect deadline for me. They did not give up that many prospects to get these players. And I think it's pretty clear that the Mets are going on a playoff push, and I like it. They just got back into the playoff race, and I think that they actually have a decent chance at making a long run after making these additions to the roster. And finally, in first place, the Mets division rival. I told you there would be one A-plus team. It is the Miami Marlins. Now you can see I have their losses first because this is all the stuff they gave up, and it is a ton. But we are now going to move on after we've talked about all these players throughout the video. We're going to move on to what they got because the prospect haul they got is absolutely insane. And this is a very long list similar to the Rays. Number 7 prospect, Davison De Los Santos. I've mentioned I really like him. I think he has 40 home run upside, similar to Jake Berger in my opinion. Outfielder Andrew Pintar, only ranked at 26 for them. I really like him too. Jared Serna, number 11, and Augustin Ramirez at number 6. We talked about them in the Yankees-Jazz Chisholm deal. I also really like both of them. They got Connor Norby for Trevor Rogers, who ranked at number 5. That is 5, 6, and 7 in their system, all through just 3 trades so far. They also acquired their number 20, Ji-Sok Shim, and their number 2, number 12, and number 8, all from the Padres, and Robbie Snelling, Adam Mazur, and Graham Pauley, along with another infield prospect in Jay Beechers. This was just an insane haul for the Marlins, in my opinion. They didn't give up an insane amount, although they did give up quite a bit. And they got a crazy amount of prospects, and that's why they are ranked as an A-plus for me. And we'll see how this works out, because like I said about the Rays, this team could be a World Series contender very soon. Thank you for watching this video. I will see you next time on Talking About Baseball, which will be tomorrow with more trade deadline content. There will be 4 straight days of trade deadline videos, and then I have a new series that I'm coming up with that'll be starting after that. So I hope you enjoy all of these upcoming videos. Please subscribe as we are getting close to 900, and by the time this video comes up, we may already be there. Subscribe, like, and do everything down there. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time on Talking About Baseball. Bye.